Well, Pixar got out their sequel this year. Now it's Disney's turn. After, 18 years? It's Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet. I love the original film. In fact, if it wasn't for Zootopia, it would probably be my favorite Disney animated film of the decade, not counting anything from Pixar. So I, like a lot of people, was really excited to see a sequel being made to it. Admittedly, the trailers didn't do a lot for me, and I was worried there wasn't going to be much of a plot. But then the last trailer came out, and you know what? I was hooked again. So I went on in, paid my ticket, watched the movie. Oh boy. I'm just wondering how many subscribers I'm going to be having by the time this video is done. It's been 6 years since the last movie, and Ralph and Vanellope are spending most of the nights together as best friends, just kinda fucking around in other arcade games. But Vanellope's getting very tired of her game, saying everything is too boring and that nothing much interesting really happens. So Ralph decides to make her a shortcut for her to race on, but she ends up taking control in the middle of an arcade race, causing the player to break the steering wheel, making the game unplugged and all of its citizens homeless. Ralph and Vanellope decide to venture into the internet in order to find a replacement part before the game is removed entirely, which is filled with a bunch of users, different games, and countless websites that you'll probably recognize. It's no surprise that when this movie was announced, it reminded a lot of people of the Emoji Movie. Now, compared to the two, I don't think this movie is nearly as bad as the Emoji Movie, but then again, given my recent thoughts on the film, that's actually not really saying a lot. But this movie still has plenty of problems to make me not enjoy it that much. As much as the internet branding isn't as bad or prominent as it was in the Emoji Movie, it's still really distracting whenever it shows up, particularly an entire scene dedicated to the Oh My Disney website, which I'm just gonna admit, I didn't like one bit. I mean, look, I get it. A lot of people really like this part, but I personally didn't care. It just feels like an excuse for Disney to shove in as much content as they want, because hey, Disney's the biggest brand in history. Gotta remind people of that throughout an entire sequence. Much praise to Disney giving more recognition to the Muppets, but seriously, this entire scene felt very shallow. Ralph and Vanellope end up bidding really high on the steering wheel at eBay, so now they have to make videos on BuzzTube, yeah, I wonder what that was based off of, in order to make money to buy the steering wheel. But when it comes to the video editing part of this movie, I think it's going to teach some messages that kids won't fully understand. You see, in order for people on BuzzTube to make money, they have to get a bunch of hearts, which is basically the equivalent of likes. But why exactly would they pay me to have likes on my videos? They also tried to over-glorify the internet while also making it seem like it's a dangerous place to be on. They have this scene where Ralph is reading comments on his videos that personally hurt his feelings, and then the movie says that he shouldn't read the comments, even though the movie's already over-glorifying on making money based off of making videos. This movie feels incredibly inconsistent with how you should be making videos. Why can't this movie teach kids that YouTube isn't just about making money, but that they can make some passionate projects? I mean, I know I make money off YouTube, but I don't do that just for the money. I like to make animations and reviews. What fun would I get out of just making money? What, does the movie think everybody out there is some kind of snob? And am I the only one that cringed at some of these videos that Ralph was making, just because they seem like trends on popular stuff that exists today, like all these prank videos or Ralph flossing? I mean, there's so much modern references in this movie that they even have a visual reference to Fortnite. God, for crying out loud. Now, I was willing to ignore all of that as long as the friendship plotline was at least done well. I mean, it was one of the best things about the first movie to me, but no, they made that worse as well. Now, I do think this movie has a really good message about how you shouldn't be clingy to your friends and that you should let them do whatever they want, even if it's something that changes their lives or even your life. But how this movie executes it felt very off to me. Why? Because they turned Ralph into an insecure, clingy, idiotic moron. This does not feel like the same character from the first movie. Yeah, Ralph wasn't always the brightest in the first movie, but he at least had a brain. He didn't just care about himself, he was smart, he was sometimes cynical. He felt very natural for me. But he doesn't feel like the same character in this movie because he's extremely possessive over Vanellope, which leads to one of the worst fucking scenes in the whole movie, where he decides to terrorize Slaughter Race, the game that Vanellope falls in love with, just to get her to come back to the arcade. And I don't see this as a simple mistake, I see this as outright terrorism. But Ralph isn't the only one who got on my nerves in this first movie, I also couldn't stand Vanellope. Now yes, Vanellope was always kind of a brat in the original movie, but she at least cared about other people. In this movie, she's incredibly selfish. Whatever her concern is, it's only regarding herself. She doesn't care about anyone else. She only seems to be fighting back for the game just to make herself satisfied. She never seems concerned for the rest of the people of Sugar Rush. And plus, at the end of the first movie, she was actually the princess, or I guess in her case, president of Sugar Rush. So shouldn't she at least be more concerned about everybody else? I mean, there's one scene in the movie where she outright admits that Ralph being her friend isn't enough for her. That's really mean. I mean, he tried to help her be a part of Sugar Rush in the first movie. That seems a little unnecessary, and it just didn't feel right to me. Nothing in this movie feels right, and now that the characterization of Ralph and Vanellope and the friendship plotline is handled so badly in this movie, it's a shame to see one of my favorite things about the first movie botched down to such an incredibly awful level. And then there's the ending. Oh boy. Okay, so I know I just had a ton of praise for the message earlier on, but even I'll admit how the movie actually ended it off seemed very rushed to me. And this was something my good friend Cleve brought up. He brought up that at the end of the movie, they should have done what Ralph and Vanellope did by voice chatting with each other, but instead do that with Vanellope and Shank. He didn't think she was ready to leave yet, and he thought it felt very out of character. And this is something I absolutely agree on. Her friendship with Ralph seems very important to her, so you'd think that she would have to think really hard about wanting to stay or not, but the fact that she just stays on day one with no thought seems very selfish to me. Like Cleve said, they should have had it to where Vanellope isn't quite ready to leave yet, but she'll have visits every so often so that she can get used to it, and that by maybe a third movie, she's finally ready to go because she's had enough time to think about it. I think that would have made for a very good message in the third movie. This is something that happens in real life. You may see something and you want to change, but you need time to think about it. When it's time to move on, just move on. Remember the good times. And that's something that I think a lot of people should know, because at the end of the day, you may not be instantly ready for something to change. I think that would have been a really good message. It's just a shame how the movie ended felt so forced, and once again, out of character. More of a reason for me to not like Vanellope in this movie. And there's still plenty of other small problems as well. I don't think this movie was very funny. I mean, the auction scene didn't get a laugh out of me because I figured they would at least know what money is, given that they pay money at tappers, for some strange reason. There's a B-plot involving Felix and Calhoun having kids, but that's quickly tossed to the side and just seems like it's only there for jokes. And I'm gonna be honest, I did not like the scenes with the Disney princesses. I know everybody loves these, and that's fine, but I just couldn't care for them. Not just because I had to spend some time seeing Ariel and Elsa again, two of the Disney princesses I cannot stand for the life of me, but these scenes just weren't that funny to me. I'm also a little annoyed that they act like they don't need men in their lives and that they're strong on their own, when some of them actually had men that made their lives better. Seems a little contradictory, doesn't it? Disney, if you want to poke fun at yourself, do it with the characters who actually fought hard by themselves. So with all these really big problems, Wreck-It Ralph 2 must be a bad movie, right? Well, not necessarily. The animation is still gorgeous, the environment in the internet world looks great, I love how all the users are kind of like these little me figures, and there's nice little references everywhere as well. The way the movie looks is visually appealing. The climax involving the giant Ralph monster is pretty cool, although I wondered, where did that virus go? The one that's causing all the insecurity problems. It just disappears and it's never clarified what actually happened to it. These pros just ultimately can't save this movie for me, and that's a damn shame. I wanted to like this movie like everybody else, I really did, but it disappointed me all throughout. There are things I like about it, but ultimately not enough for me to want to see this movie again. I guess I'm at least grateful that the first movie exists so I can just go back and rewatch that again, because thanks to that, I think I'd much rather just have this movie deleted from my browsing history.